Hey everybody, welcome out to this episode. We're going to cover combat in this episode, and I want to cover a few different elements of combat. First, we're going to talk about the two different types of combat that you're likely to encounter. The first is theater of the mind, in which case the players all sort of imagine what's going on in the field of combat, and you don't really know exactly where your characters are on the field, but you imagine it in your mind as the DM describes the scene for you. This is a pretty common type of combat, and certain DMs will prefer this type of combat to other types of combat. It takes less time to set up, it is generally more efficient. So if you have a session that tends to last less than 3 or 4 hours, generally this is a type of combat that you're going to see more often than not. The other type of combat that you're going to see is called tabletop combat, and that is where you have minifigs and you are moving those minifigs around on a map with grid squares. Usually these grid squares represent 5 feet of movement, and your characters have between 20 and 40 feet typically as you're moving around the map. Generally, these types of combat situations draw out and can last whole sessions or even longer, and generally they take up sort of a shorter session, like a 2-hour or a 3-hour session. So we're going to explore those two different types of combat. And then we're going to actually look at what bad combat efficiency looks like, and then what good combat efficiency looks like. So bad combat efficiency would be like taking up too much time making decisions in combat, or maybe not putting enough time into knowing what you're going to do in combat before your turn comes around. Whereas good combat efficiency is where everything is sort of moving at a good pace, and nobody feels like they're waiting too long to take their turn in combat. Because combat can really drag down the game and take a long time, it's important to get some of these concepts down. And it's important for a DM to really think about the kinds of things that they would like to do in combat to make sure that it runs smoothly, efficiently, and effectively. So let's dig in.
All right, so Shaq, you just did 21 points of damage.
Yep.
All right. Jesse, what's your character doing? Shaq, you're on deck. Think about what you're doing.
Go.
Come on. What do you want to do? Cast spell, get up in his face, attack him. You got the broadsword. What do you want to do?
I guess I'm just gonna walk up a little ways and I'll shocking grasp him.
Okay. Roll to see if you hit him.
It's a
Come on, it's your spell modifier.
11.
An 11, or are you thinking 11? Spell
11.
modifier. Okay.
Yep.
In that clip, we saw that the DM was beginning to get frustrated because after doing everything that he could to make sure that combat was going to continue on unimpeded, he had a little difficulty getting one of the players moving. And the result was that combat slowed way down while he tried to prompt this player to get moving. Now, this DM, because he lost his patience a little bit, he started to make some mistakes, right? He was a little bit too pushy on trying to get combat to continue moving. He did some things in his tone that would make somebody think, "Oh, this DM is mad at me. Oh, I'm doing something wrong." So we don't want to get to that point where we're making people feel bad about what they're doing, but we do want to train them to begin to be more efficient in combat. So that was an example of really inefficient combat because While one of the players seemed to be ready to go and was already researching their next move at the DM's prompting, the other player was having some real difficulty in keeping up. So let's get into the next example.
All right, so you just did 23 points of damage to you, Shaq. Okay.
Ouch.
Jesse, your character's up. Shaq, it'll be your turn after. Think about what you want to do.
All right, and he's bloodied. Yeah.
Yes, he's bloodied. He is currently 10 feet away from you.
Okay, I'm gonna roll 2 attacks at the same time.
Okay.
My first attack is a 16 to hit. Second attack is a 18 to hit.
18 will hit, 16 will not.
All right. Rolling damage for the 18. That's 5 damage.
Okay, 5 damage. Got it. All right, Shaq, you're up. You're on deck.
Recording, we saw that combat moved much more quickly, and we were able to get through the same amount of actual story within the combat as in the previous video, but much more quickly. So it was an example of very efficient combat. Everybody was really engaged. Nobody was distracted. Everything was going as it should in order to get through combat very quickly and efficiently, and with maximum time to finish that out and continue the story. Let's look at the next example.
All right, so you guys remember, you guys are in Esau. Okay, you're at the top of the ziggurat. You then met the priest. That's the priest.
Okay.
And he has become hostile. Okay, so what do you guys do?
All right.
You're 5 feet away.
Okay, I'm 5 feet away, so I'm gonna take a step closer to him.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna try to hit him with the side of my sword, trying to knock him out.
Okay. Bludgeoning damage. Okay.
And that's a 15 to hit.
Yep, that hits. Roll for bludgeoning damage.
Okay. 3 damage.
Okay. Got it. All right.
You wear the
Check.
cutest
So
clothes.
your character, you are. Oh, you're actually here. There you go. So you are still 5 feet away, but you got to move the diagonal or the straight.
Saw there was an example of the tabletop variety of combat. That is where everybody is looking at a grid and moving their characters around on that grid for the combat. The DM did not stop describing everything. However, much less description was needed because the players could see where their miniatures were on that grid. You also heard my wife interacting with our treasured Chief of Goose for the video series. So thanks for my wife Sarah for interjecting some humanity. One point that you could see there, though, was that even though my wife Sarah was interacting with the Chief of Goose, it did not distract the players. The players were focused on the tabletop combat that was going on. So that's what you should be doing as a player who's checked in and letting your DM know that you are engaged in what's going on at the table. There's nothing worse than a disengaged player who is communicating that through their body language, through observing the rest of the room, for looking around. Those are things that can annoy some of our DMs and some of the other players because it sort of slows things down. So that was tabletop combat. Next, we're going to take a look at Theater of the Mind combat.
Alright, so you guys are in Esom. The atmosphere is really tense. You guys are very sweaty and very tired, but no points of exhaustion.
Okay.
From walking up the ziggurat, 1, 2, 3, 5 stories, and right when you get to the top, you see this curled, evil smile on the priest's face. Your feeling is of malevolence and just dark, foreboding, just crushing feeling being up this high and seeing this level of evil. All right, so what do you do?
I will cast Fireball.
All right. So we're moving to the surprise round. We're going straight for the attack. All right. Roll. Oh, nope. That's me. Let's see if I can. What's your DC again?
DC is 14.
14. All right. You got a 16. Okay. So. All right.
He takes 14 damage.
14 damage. Okay, got it. All right. You see that part of his robe gets singed a little bit, and the curled smile now kind of straightens and turns into more of like a neutral, and then eventually to a frown. And it's not that he's doing evil, he's going, you're interrupting his plans. All right, with that feeling. Surprise round. What do you do?
I will try to run him through with my sword and tackle him off the top of the ziggurat, but keeping myself on top.
Gotcha. Okay, with a shove. Okay,
Yep.
shove with damage. Got it. It's an opposed strength.
It's going to be an 11.
11.
That's for the attack. I didn't know if you wanted me to roll something.
Oh no,
separate.
nope. Attack's great. He got a 9. Okay, so the attack hit. Now we're gonna do opposed
We
strength.
got a really great example of theater of the mind combat. The DM gave a really thick description of everything that was going on, and the players had a lot to work off of as they interacted with each other and the DM and the environment. There was some room for imprecision. You notice one of the players talked about pushing the Dark Lord off of the ziggurat, whereas I, in my imagination, had imagined that they were in an enclosed space with the ziggurat. But the DM went ahead with the interaction. And often, a DM may not have a concrete idea of exactly how this combat should go. Often, this can be either impromptu, or a DM will be looking for player input on how things are going to go. So it really can be a question of a little bit of give and take, right? We're sort of improv playing together as we go along, and we're creating the story in our minds. It's theater of the mind. So that's the theater of the mind style of combat. Let's see what we have next.
All right, so we just ended the Goblin Chief's turn. All right, Tony, it's your character's turn. What do you do?
Oh, where am I?
You're in the combat with the Goblin Chief.
Right. The Goblin
Just
Chief.
ended his turn. So now it's your turn. You're in
Okay.
melee combat with him. What do you do?
I'm in melee combat.
Yeah.
Okay, can I use my bow?
You can, but you get disadvantage because he's right in your face.
Right.
Just grapple him. Just simply grapple him. And
You
move on.
could
Oh,
grapple.
well, I have this broadsword, though, too.
Well, but you'd have to put it away, and then pulling out's the action, and you wouldn't have time to make an attack.
Right.
I mean, you could drop the bow and pull out
Right.
as the free action,
Yeah.
and then attack.
I've got this spell, too. Should I Hunter's Mark him, and then...
Well, that's your bonus action. I
Yeah.
mean, you could do that, but then what are you doing for your action?
Right.
You could just simply punch him. Just move on, punch him twice.
What is this, Leomund's Tiny Hut? Can I use that? Is that something that I can, like...
That's a spell.
Make a hut in the combat, and then I don't have to fight?
Well, that's a spell that takes 1 minute to cast, and
Okay.
we're dealing with 6 seconds here, so that would be 10 turns. You could do that, but your character's not going to do anything for 10 turns.
Right.
We need your help in combat. We can't.
They really do
I
need your help in
have-
combat.
A dagger?
That's not going to do enough, and if I remember correctly, your dex is not the greatest.
What about this one that says Enamored Strike?
Weren't we talking about using your broadsword? Why don't we just go back to that and use your broadsword?
Oh, okay.
It deals a lot more damage.
Okay, so this says I use
You would roll to hit.
right.
See if you hit him.
I rolled a hit.
Yep. Against his AC. What'd you get?
That's a 27.
Okay, that hits. Now you would roll for damage. What's the
Okay.
damage of a broadsword?
1d8 plus 5.
Okay, so
There you go. You got this.
Okay.
no, that's a D10.
Example, we have a player who's really having a tough time of it. He can't really read his character sheet. He's just indecisive, doesn't really know what's going on. And the DM is being so patient with him. He's just giving him suggestions and explaining why some things will work and some things won't work. Really, this is a result of the player coming to the table without doing enough homework, without understanding their role in this whole interaction. So it's an example of a few different things. First off, we're doing Theater of the Mind combat. So I obviously wasn't paying attention. I was distracted. And I ended up in this situation where I just didn't know how my character worked, and so it ended up being really inefficient in my combat style. So it was just an example of all the worst things to do as a player. So hopefully you enjoyed that little bit of an example. But it really is like something that you see sometimes in games with especially newer players. And if you know this is going to be a newer player, it's a good idea just to coach them up a little bit ahead of time to make sure that they don't get embarrassed in a situation like that. Because that's exactly the kind of situation in which a player might get embarrassed, especially as other players start to talk. Now, our group is a very accepting, very loving, very structured group, and we try our best to build community first and play the game second. But if you're in groups that are like a public group or meeting at a comic book store or some things like that, you may run across people who are a little less patient for that kind of thing. So it's really important that you as a player especially, and then DMs as a whole, recognize that the possibility for this kind of behavior exists, and that you're ready for it should the occasion arise to sort of redirect that. If I had a player who was at my table and behaving in this kind of way, I might very well try and rush through if I was almost done with that bit of combat, sort of like our DM did in this case. But if I just couldn't get him to really get with it, I might sort of suspend combat, have everybody take a break, pull that player aside and say, hey, here's what I want you to do. For the next, little bit of combat, let's just use your broadsword. Let's swing that every once in a while when your turn comes up, just to be efficient, to keep things moving along. And then after the game tonight, let's talk about how to be efficient in combat and how to really make the most of your 6 seconds of time that you have. So that's really sort of the intent of that example, is to give you an idea of what kind of behavior is sort of beyond the pale that you really shouldn't subject your other players to along the way, because that's a great way to lose players along the way as well. So this has been our episode on combat. I appreciate your attention and your time. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you on the next episode, episode 3, in which we're going to cover railroading the plot.